Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. I am delighted for you to meet Anne Louise O'Connell. Hey, Anne.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
I am great, and I'm so happy to see you. I think it's December, maybe, the last time we met on Zoom,
Yes.
and I was a privilege to be a guest on Anne's podcast, and so I'm just so thrilled to be able to return the favor. Writers helping writers. That's what we do.
Oh,
That's what we do.
absolutely. Raise
Anne
one
has an
another up.
ex Yes, and Anne has an exciting book she wants to talk to you about. But before we dive in, I would love to hear about your writing journey. Like, were you one of those that, came out of the womb and asked your mama for paper, or what was your writing journey like?
I love that thought. Do you know if I go way, way, way back, reading was a huge thing in my home. My parents were both big readers. My siblings, we spent a lot of Saturday afternoons at the bookmobile. Just, we could walk to it. I have wonderful memories of sitting, curling up in the lazy boy with my mom and reading. I guess the first writing I did, it's kind of funny, was, teen angst poetry in high school, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, but I didn't start writing novels until much, much later. But the bulk of my professional life was in public relations. So, there's a lot of writing that is
Mhm.
woven into that career path. I wrote everything from press releases and feature articles and pitches and corporate bios and website copy and marketing materials and eventually social media posts and so on. And then I moved to Dubai and got licensed as a freelance writer. So I was writing more and more and loving it, and also writing for myself and my family about my experiences in Dubai. So then I had the good fortune to meet a publisher, and I was doing writing workshops at the time, and so we did some co collaborative workshops. And then she saw the pieces I had written about living in Dubai and asked me if I would write a book for her publishing company called Summertime Publishing. So I wrote a book called At Home in Dubai. So it was a nonfiction, traditionally published, and I found I loved the process of writing a full-length book versus all of the short form writing I had been doing. And so simultaneously, I was starting perimenopause, but I'll fast forward that a little bit. So after At Home in Dubai came out, I was starting to write about, what a night sweat felt like, just for myself and thinking about starting a blog, and describing the mood swings and things like that. But then I created a fictitious character named Abby, who I made her experience worse than mine, so it made me feel better. And then it just it evolved into a novel. I learned about National Novel Writing Month, which is 1 month you commit to writing 50,000 words in a month. So then it evolved.
NaNoWriMo.
NaNoWriMo, yeah,
November. Yes.
yeah. So that was my first novel. So Mental Pause came out in 2013. Before it was cool to write about menopause. Um, but I really loved that. I'm a huge mystery fan. I
Yeah,
read
so let's
it.
talk about that. How did
Yeah,
you go from being a nonfiction writer to delving into mystery and crime and murder?
that's interesting. It sort of happened. by osmosis, if I might say. So, like I said, I hadn't intended to write a novel when I was writing about my perimenopausal experience, but it turned into that. And that main character wound up on trial for murder. Um, and so it was a natural flow that I started writing a mystery, a crime fiction, a courtroom drama, because those are the things I love to read and the things I love to watch. So it's kind of ingrained in me. And then at that point, I had moved to Thailand, but 4 years in Dubai had given me so much fodder for like the experiences. It's such a wild and wonderful place. And there's these undercurrents of crazy things that happen. So, that just kind of, and I had moved again and I had lots of time on my hands. So I just,
Fueled all that. So this is a series. You told me
yes,
earlier that you hadn't really intended to write a
no,
series,
no,
but now you have a series.
yep,
And maybe you could show us the two books. We'll talk mostly about Deep Freeze, but let's look at both
yeah.
books. So this is the first
This is the
one.
first one, yeah. So the
Yeah.
first two are set in Dubai, so this is the first one. And as I said, all of my books have like little kernels of truth. So they're like real situations that have occurred. And then the second one, Deep Freeze, is also set in Dubai. But I've traveled all over the world, so I try and weave in. So in Deep Deceit, part of the story also happens in Saudi Arabia. And in Deep Freeze, I'd say 95% is in Dubai, but then there's a scene, very, in my mind, a chunky chapter that takes place in Bangkok. Because, again, my experience from living there has created a lot of
A lot of
great,
fodder. Yes.
yes,
My in Justice for Emerson, I have a chunky part that takes place in Bangkok as
yes,
well, but 1968
I love
Bangkok.
that. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, tell us the premise and tell us about. So you told us what the setting is. Give us the premise of Deep Freeze.
So, like I said, I kind of pull from bits and pieces of experience, and then I have a very active imagination. So,
Mhm.
if you're like me, you're sitting in an airport or wherever, and you see people and you create stories about them in your mind. So, um, Deep Freeze, it starts in the ski hill in Dubai, in the mall in Dubai. And there's an accident. One of the chairlifts detaches and crashes to the ground. Um, the main character is there with a very dear friend, and as the chairlift crashes, Susan realizes that her friend Pat's husband, Barry, was on the chair. So fast forward, they're at the hospital. There's an attempt on his life. So Susan starts to feel that that the ski hill wasn't necessarily an accident. And then at the same time, Pat and Barry's maid has come to them with concern about a friend of hers that has gone missing. So as the story evolves, Susan starts to suspect that there's something that connects these two situations.
Yes, yes. We're off and running. We are off and running. So tell me a little bit more about what Susan is like. Like what are some of her qualities, her characteristics, and what do you love about her?
As you know, when you're writing a book, your characters do really come alive and you really do develop connections to them. And even though initially Deep Deceit was going to be a standalone, I've had to think a lot more about Susan as I'm developing her character through a series. Um, and what I love most about her is I realized, and it was kind of a subconscious, but now it's a real dawning that she is kind of an amalgamation of myself and my two sisters, whom
Mm.
I adore. So that really makes me happy. Susan is actually my oldest sister's name, And my character, Susan, is a nurse. And so my other sister, Janet, is also a nurse. Um, but Susan is also an empath, which is kind of more me. She's physically fit, which is not me. I try, but I
Mhm.
fall a little bit short. She drives a Jeep Wrangler, which is one of my dream cars, and I did drive in Dubai. She loves to read. She loves classical music. Um, the nursing, it was psychiatric nursing. She's loyal to a fault. And part of that is because she's an empath and she feels, other people very deeply. Um, she's married to a pilot, and her marriage is a little bit on the rocks. So in the book, there's these parallel stories while she's sort of emotionally traumatized by the potential demise of her marriage. She's also emotionally traumatized by all of the stuff that her friend is going through.
Went
Um,
through. Yes, that sounds like a wonderful and layered story.
I hope so.
Um, yes, very, very exciting. When did it come out?
That came out last year, 2025, in March
So
of
is there
2025.
something in the
Yes.
works?
Yes, so I'm working on book three, and I don't want to spoil anything for Deep Freeze, but the next one is called Deep River, and the setting is Paris, which is another favorite place of mine that I've been to many times. Um, and Susan is there just kind of, regrouping, and she's been invited by her favorite aunt who also raised her and her two brothers. Susan was 15 when her parents died in a car accident. So her Aunt Margaret, they moved in with her. So Aunt Margaret has a beautiful little flat in Paris and has invited Susan to come and spend some time. And Susan arrives, and Margaret has gone missing.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Like you, I have traveled all over the world, 5 continents, worked all over the world, and all my books take place in New York.
Oh,
What's that about?
we talked about that before. Well, don't feel bad. Well, that's where a lot of your life experience is. And
That's where
after,
I'm the most comfortable.
yes, after book three, book four, I'm going to bring her to Nova Scotia.
Nice. Yeah, so you're already moving, you're already
Yeah, I've got
got books
five or six.
in
Yeah,
your head.
yeah.
Excellent. 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 You'll have to come
Yes,
back when the
I
new
would
one
love to.
comes out. Tell us about your podcast. Why did you start an author podcast? Um, and just give us some flavor.
I love doing this stuff. I do have a background in television production. Um,
Mhm.
it wasn't my primary role, but I did work at an educational television station and did some producing. Um, so at one point, I'm always looking for ways to promote my books, to help my authors, get exposure. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to start a podcast or a broadcast. With the main mission of giving my authors some exposure. But because, I put out, between 3 and 6 books a year, that doesn't keep a podcast going. So I just started adding other authors and industry professionals from all ilks, self-published, traditionally published, hybrid published. I've interviewed writers, I've interviewed designers, other publishers. So, and it just sort of snowballed,
Yeah.
right?
And this and it came from, so your publishing company,
Yes,
you take on writers,
yes.
and so they would be self-published, they would be hybrid, traditionally
Hybrid.
published,
Yeah, so
hybrid.
it's a hybrid publishing company,
Mhm.
and we basically take everything on so the author, a self-published author has to do all of the work. They have to coordinate the editors, find designers, decide how they're going to distribute their books and things like that. We take all of that on for them. So the difference is it is a fee to publish model, but we approach it as a real partnership.
Yeah, that sounds good. Like a lot of writers watch us. So let us, but this is what are you, so I'm gonna ask you to tell them how they can be in touch with you for your podcast, for your business, your
Mhm.
books, all of that. But this is what are you reading? What are
Oh,
you writing?
oh my goodness.
So
Yes.
we do need some book recommendations or a book recommendation.
Well, I mean, gosh, there are so many books, and we could have an entire show or hours on that.
Just about that.
Um, But I have to say, our mutual friend Bruce Bishop, I love his books.
Mm,
So I would start with Uncommon Sons, the most recent Grow Up Rory Rafferty. But it's award season in our part of the world, in Atlantic Canada, in the publishing business. So I'm trying to read some of the nominated books. And a book
mm.
I just finished reading was called Five Seasons of Charlie Francis by Danica Roach. And actually, I have it right here because
Yeah, show us.
she was on my show this week.
Mm.
It's wonderful. Literary
Cool.
fiction, yeah. Mixed race. She's the main character. Her father is Mi'kmaq, her mom is uh, white Caucasian, and it's just a lot. It's a great book. It's a great book. And then what I'm reading now, what's on my night table, is Annie's Day by Apple Gidley, which is historical fiction set in World War II and sort of focuses on the army nurses from Australia.
Mm.
Really
Well, that's an
cool.
interesting tie.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
very cool.
yeah.
Excellent. Well, I know that you all are now very, very intrigued about Anne Louise O'Connell and that you want to read her books. You want to write reviews because you know how important that is. I know you know.
I
And
do.
so, both her book recommendations and her wonderful series. And so you can find her on Amazon. You can find her any place you buy books, in independent bookstores. You can find them in libraries. And if you don't see it, ask.
Hmm.
Just ask.
Hmm.
Now, where can they find you? They want to find out more about your business, more about your podcast, more about your books, be in touch with you. How could they do that?
Well, the easiest way where all of that comes under the same umbrella is my website, which is ocpublishing.ca. And if you make a mistake and do .com, it'll still go there. So .ca or .com, ocpublishing.ca. Um, I'm on most social media. So Facebook would be /OC Publishing or Anne Louise O'Connell author. Instagram at OCPubHFX. LinkedIn is Anne Louise O'Connell. And you can see the podcast on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, just type in OC Publishing and all of
That
the
comes right
interviews,
up.
including the
Yeah,
one with you, Karen,
including mine.
will be
Yes.
there. And if you go to my website at the very top, is an opportunity to subscribe to the newsletter, which I only send out once a month. So I promise you I won't bombard you with information.
And we will put all your links in the description so that people can find you. And I want to thank you so much, Anne, for being on the show. This has been so fun. I want to thank all of you for watching, or perhaps you're listening on Apple Podcast, or you're listening on Spotify, watching on YouTube, watching it on my website, watching it on Facebook. I thank you for doing that. And I hope to see you next time on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Have a great, great week, everybody. Bye bye.